This is a video for people who have a Mr. Heater little buddy propane heater that either won't light or won't stay lit. I had my heater for a couple years. It had always worked flawlessly, and then we moved and we're still moving in. But anyways, I tried to light it last night and it would not stay lit. So it would light, and there was a little pilot light, but when I'd let out on the red button, which actually goes here, it wouldn't stay lit. So anyways, first thing I'm gonna do since it's apart is just talk about the assembly itself, point out some parts, and then I'll put it back together, and then you can, when you take yours apart, you can just take it apart in reverse order. But anyways, the thermocouple is right here. And this is just like a hot water tank, a gas hot water tank thermocouple. There are two wires inside of this heat sensing tip. They're connected at the end, and when they get hot, a voltage is created that travels, and there's a wire coming out the bottom that goes to this solenoid control gas valve. So basically, the reason you hold the button in for 30 seconds for this to get hot is it allows the appropriate voltage to be built up so that there's enough voltage to operate the solenoid gas valve. Anyways, mine would stay lit, would get started to light. So that meant the igniter, which is here, it was fine. You see the black wire going back to the push button. Again, this is where the red plastic button rests. You'll also note that the red button just slides on and off, just like a gas grill knob or something like that. But it's a tight fit. So when you're taking this thing apart, you have to pull that red knob straight out. If you do that, you're not gonna break it, but it will take some effort. So basically what happens is when I was pushing this button in, gas was coming out this tube here, or down this silver tube. This is the air inlet for air to mix with the propane. And I was getting a pilot light here, but then when I'd let out on the red button after a 30-second count, it would not stay lit. So that, to me, that meant a couple different things. It meant either the thermocouple's not working, but I mean, the truth is this is a pretty, I don't know, it's a simple design. That thermocouple's not under intense heat, and I doubted very seriously that the wires inside had become separated because we've been very gentle with this heater. So my guess was, because it wasn't staying lit, is that my flame wasn't strong enough. And I knew that it was either maybe the air hole was clogged, or maybe there was debris in this tube or in the tip somehow. And so my plan was to take this thing apart and then take off this assembly here and clean it out. Now, the way that I did that, after I took the plastic covers off, was just take off this little screw right here. And that's very simple to do. I will note that one thing, if you look at this piece, look closely at how it fits in there. It needs to wedge into this little hole and use this little tip here on the piece of metal to keep your igniter in place. So pay close attention to that. Otherwise your igniter will flop around. You don't want that to happen. The other thing that I had to do was take off this nut right here, which came apart pretty easily. I actually attempted to unscrew this one, and that was not working. I started to bend this little tube, so I backed off on it. Well, at the end of the day, with this screw out and this here off, I was able to thread this out, and I literally just blew on it. I didn't use compressed air, but I blew on it on both ends. I could hear air coming out. I honestly thought that probably wouldn't have been enough, but when I put it back on, got it back assembled, and started back up, lo and behold, that was the fix. And so, it's kind of like a carburetor on a car. Just a little piece of debris can make a big difference in the flow of fuel, and that's what it was for me. So hopefully, as you're troubleshooting, if you won't light or won't stay lit, my guess is this needs to be cleaned out. You could use compressed air. I just chose to, blow it out with myself or whatever. So a couple things about assembly and disassembly. You might have noticed, excuse the mess, that I have a hole here. That's because there's a screw on both sides underneath the sticker that you need to find. And that's really important if you're gonna get these off. There's several screws. Looking here at the table, it looks like there's 7 plus 5, 12 screws required to take this thing apart. So you'll notice here on this piece, there are two holes, one here, one here. That's where those are the last two screws that I took out. So those are the first two screws I'm gonna put back together as I put this thing on. And this piece would go in like so. And I'd start with those screws. Once you do that, honestly, you just kind of go around the whole thing to get the screws on. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. The other thing you'll want to pay attention to is this red metal piece. You know, the word caution goes at the top, obviously, but you'll notice that there are a couple little C-shaped channels here, and they just fit around the dog ears here, located around the outside. So as long as you get that in the right orientation and you pay attention to the screw type for each hole, because you'll notice there's two different sizes of screws, you should have no problem at all. This thing runs fine just like this. Everything else, all the reason you have those other screws is for safety purposes. I did say I would talk about the solenoid gas valve, which is right here. Also, I'm gonna have two links below, one for the basics of how a thermocouple works, and one on the basics of how a solenoid gas valve works, because you're probably wondering, you know, how does this thing really stay on just by holding that red button in for 30 seconds? And at least I was curious how that worked. So I found a couple of videos I think you'll really enjoy, and they're short and educational. And that being said, good luck. The only other thing I would recommend is if you don't get any, if there's nothing starting at all, just make sure that this button here, which is the off button, the black button fits over top of this guy, isn't like stuck pushed in, because you can see the thermocouple wire actually travels through that button. And if for some reason it was stuck down, that breaks the circuit and you can't get a signal to your gas valve. So anyways, I hope that helps, and good luck.